Hi there, my name's Anna and welcome back to my art channel. So as you can see, today we're working using acrylic paint and I'm squirting a lot of paint out directly onto the canvas here. That's not something I usually do, but I just thought it would be fun here and I'd be able to cover a larger surface more quickly. And dry as fast. As long as acrylic paint stays wet, you can blend it very nicely, and acrylic paint does tend to dry faster than some other mediums, but in this case, with a simple background and the amount of paint I used, it was no problem whatsoever to get a nice out of blurry greenish dark background. And I actually had to wait quite a while for it to dry when I wanted to continue painting. I'm also painting the sides of the canvas, so it'll be ready to hang once I'm finished. And now I'm starting to paint this cute little frog. This is a red-eyed tree frog, and he also has red little fingers or orangey red. I'm using some yellow, orange and red in different variations on this little guy, just to give it some interest because they're not flat areas of colour, obviously. And I'm using a very fine little brush for this painting because it's relatively small and I want to add a lot of detail as well, and it just gives me some more control. And now I'm painting his little branch. This branch is covered in moss, so I'm using a lot of green as well. And I'm using different shades of green and brown, and just kind of blending everything into each other, following my reference photo to see which areas are darker and lighter, but otherwise just mushing the paint into each other. It all looks fairly out of focus at the moment, but the more I layer, the more it will be refined towards the end. And that's the beauty about acrylic paint. You can layer nearly endlessly and add more and more detail as you go along if you want to, and the layers beneath will kind of shine through and give the painting some dimension. Different acrylic paints will be more or less opaque. A lot of them are very translucent, but I find, for example, yellow ochre is very opaque, and I guess it's just the pigment itself because it's the same with watercolor. And some of the more reddish browns will be very translucent. Sap green is inclined to be very translucent, and sometimes that's a curse, but it can also be a blessing because you can do lovely glazing that way. So I'm still working on the branch and just following my reference photo, as I said, and blending the different colors into each other, and keeping in mind which areas are darker and which are lighter, to make sure I'm adding a little bit of contrast already. But I can always correct things as I go along and add a second layer. And I want this moss to look very fluffy, so I have it standing out the bottom of the branch a little bit and on the top as well. And now I'm starting to use some green for this little guy. You can see, sometimes you can see a bit of my palette on the right hand side, and I'm actually using a very gaudy greens for some of this frog, and a lot of yellow as well. He's got some very vibrant greens going on. But in other areas I'll dull the green down or use a darker one as well. He's coloured in different shades of green. Adding in the pupil will usually give the piece some direction. Animals or people can look very weird before you add the pupils in. And I'm just jumping around the frog a little bit, adding in the different shades of green where I see them. And he's got these lovely yellow stripes on him as well. I'm working on the fingers a little bit, adding in some yellow highlights. And just refining them a little bit more. I'm adding some darker green in now, and I'm dotting it in a little bit, adding some more detail. And with the dark colors, I'm adding more contrast to the piece as well. I'm also changing the shape of my drawing a little bit, adding some dark background color because I didn't get the initial sketch perfect. Here you can see I'm going over the face several times because it's really the focus of the painting, and I want the most detail really in the eyes and the face. And he's starting to look like a green-eyed tree frog now. Adding some dark green, nearly black to some of the areas of the frog that are really in shadow. And the more contrast you add, obviously, the more realistic it gets. Now I'm layering some more moss onto this branch. And it doesn't take really much to make it really look realistic, just a bit more layering here and there. Some more yellow in some areas that are hit by light. And I'm darkening some of the shadow areas as well, and just adding a bit more texture to the branch overall. It really depends what medium I'm working in, because I work very differently. When I'm using colored pencil, for instance, I will mostly work in one area until it's finished. Here I'm jumping around a lot. Adding in his white little belly with some brown shading. And glazing some color over the hands, some more red here and there. And a little bit more yellow, just kind of trying to get the colors right as I see them in the reference photo. So I'm nearly finished him really at this stage. I'm just kind of messing around now and adding detail. And I want to add little dots on his face in different colors depending on areas, or just kind of little pores in his skin to really add this detail. And I guess it's those last stages that can be the most fun, that just kind of bring everything together. Adding some more black around the eyes. And some white little highlights on his face. And I can dull them down again by glazing over them if I want to. So by the way, if you're enjoying this video and if you have watched this far, please do remember to give me a thumbs up and to subscribe to my channel. That would be really great. Here you can see I've glazed over those white little dots a little bit to just kind of tie it all together a bit more. They were maybe a bit too stark white, but those areas are still lighter under that green. Adding some more white to the chest, just refining that a little bit more. And some more blue to his arms. And some more little white highlights on the eye to make them look really watery and reflective, as eyes are. Some more yellow highlights and dots. I also added some blue dots to his chest. And really just adding a little bit of detail everywhere. Some of the color I add, you can barely even see the difference, but other things do really make a difference. And I think he always gets more and more realistic towards the end. Using the tiniest little paintbrush that I could find for this. And I did really love how he turned out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon in one of my next videos. Take care and bye bye!